A trio of Auburn coaches had some very interesting things to say to the media yesterday.
In the world full of podcasts, he's the undisputed heavyweight champion of hot takes, an Auburn sports homer, master of the book, and message board legend. Get your buttons buttoned and your hats flattened because the Top Button Podcast is about to kick off. And you don't want to miss your courtside seat. Now, here's your host, Charlie Five.
Yes, sir. We're back. It's another episode of the Top Button Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Rush, a.k.a. Charlie Five, and happy Dadgum Thursday. Happy Dadgum Thursday, the week before kickoff. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The coaches spoke, several of the coaches spoke to the media yesterday, and they had some pretty interesting things to say. I'm digging this staff, maybe just because this is the first real time I'm diving in and listening to what they all have to say. But they let a lot of stuff. They drop a lot of bombs. You know, you had Tiger Talk on Monday dropping bombs, and I feel like they let a lot of good intel out. Let it out sounds bad. They shared a lot of very valuable intel yesterday, and we're going to talk about three different coaches that shared some things and the highlights of those. But before we get started, we got to give a shout out to our boy Ford Stokes with retirement results presented by Active Wealth. You can check him out at retirementresults.com/plan. Get your free portfolio analysis. You may already have something set in stone. You may already have a plan, but do you know if that plan is performing at its maximum level, most efficient level, most fee, the least amount of fees that you can possibly pay? Ford's the guy for you to do that, and he'll do that for you absolutely free. Check him out. retirementresults.com/plan. He's an Auburn fan. Tell him War Eagle. Tell him I sent you. I know he's fired up for the season as well. So if nothing else, you can talk a little bit of Auburn football. So Ford Stokes, check him out. Tell him I sent you. All right. So yesterday, several coaches spoke to the media. DJ Durkin, Derrick Nix, Tanner Burns specifically is who we're going to talk about today. And man, I'm telling you, it could be just that this is the first real full season that I'm diving into a daily show and I'm noticing more stuff like this, but I feel like this staff is letting a lot more information out or giving a lot more very insightful information about how things are run, how things are done, and give you a pretty good outlook of what to expect in the season. So we're going to break it down. The first one we're going to talk about is DJ Durkin, the defensive coordinator. First off, the more and more I hear this guy speak, the more I really like him. He is very energetic. He says a lot of he's funny. He's he's entertaining in general, which I love, which I respect. But he also again, he gives really good information, really good insight about the team. So one of the things that two things in particular that he talked about that I thought were interesting and then funny. The first thing was he talked about, he continues to harp on pass rush, that Auburn he's sort of built this roster of that defensive front that's able to actually get really good pressure on the quarterback without having to blitz. I mean, he mentioned that specifically. He said we're able to get pressure with 4 consistently and sometimes even with 3. And I know you'll hear that and you'll say, oh dear, rushing 3, 4th and 31. I get it. You'll sort of go into a panic mode, like let's not rush just 3. But there's certain times when 3rd and long where you can mix some stuff up. But if you have that defensive front where you can do that, hey, that affords you so much that you can do on the back end to be able to smother the defense. Now, does that mean you're getting a sack every time? Absolutely not. And does it even mean that the defensive play works every single time? Absolutely not. But if you can continue to get pressure with 4, if you can just send 4, you just have a higher rate of success. And he mentioned that. He said, when we can create pressure, which is just essentially speeding up the quarterback, getting him off his mark, hitting him, touching him, making him, frustrated. When you can do that with just 4, last year they were having to send, based off the film that he watched, they were having to send a lot of extra bodies. And when you can do that with just 4 or just 3, it affords you the opportunity to do a lot more disguising coverages, switching up coverages, just in general, double team, being able to take out at the best offensive weapon. You can bracket, you can double, you can do things like that when you can do stuff like that because you don't have to pull somebody out of coverage to send them at the quarterback. And that has sort of been a message. That's something that I've observed. That's something that I've shared. And it's something that DJ Durkin feels like could be a strength. He mentioned people specifically. He mentioned Jalen McLeod. He mentioned Keldrick Falk. He mentioned Kieron Crawford. He mentioned Jamonta Waller. He mentioned DeMarcus Riddick as being, which that would, if DeMarcus Riddick is rushing the passer, then that would be, some sort of blitz package. But he mentioned a lot of these guys by name that he feels like are going to be able to really create some havoc on the defensive front, because that's where everything starts. Everything starts up front. Everything starts, the play effectiveness starts with the disruption that can be had up front. Amaris Williams was another one that he named specifically as far as just naming off dudes. He says these guys can get to the quarterback. These guys are making it happen. And there's not just one of them. He's named 5 different dudes that he can put on the field and make it happen. Another thing that he said, and I love this, the helmet comms, helmet communication. The little chip that's going to be in the helmet. Coaches being able to talk to the players through the helmet communication system has been a big topic as of late. I think people think that Hugh's not going to use it because of the bowl game, which I could do a whole show on why that's the case. That was not a Hugh thing. That was a whole SEC thing. It was a bargaining strategy with some type of helmet communications company that the SEC was trying to work to partner with. So regardless, we are using helmet communications. They are going to be heavily used, and there are going to be it's going to be a huge impact because but there are some limitations to it. Okay, it's not like the NFL, and DJ Durkin mentioned this. The defenses and offenses don't really huddle anymore, and that's typically how it would work. Quarterback would get the play. Okay, I got the play. Guys, here's the play. Let's go run it. That's not how college football really works by and large. It's a lot of spread out. It's a lot of tempo. It's a lot of no huddle. So when the offense doesn't huddle, then the defense typically can't huddle either. So from a play calling standpoint, like it's a little bit different because you can't just call the play in when it's tempo to the linebacker and the linebacker sort of call the play out to everybody else. You're still going to have to look to the sideline. You're still going to have to get your play calls from in there, but they are going to be able to utilize that for communication in game up to that 15-second play clock mark. And DJ Durkin talked about it. There has been really no bugs. They've kind of got a little good system figured out. He said the only complaint I get is sometimes I'm a little too loud. Sometimes I'm a little too loud in the headset. And, he laughed after he said it. He said, I'm a fiery guy. I'm a loud guy. I can hear that now. I can hear that. I can hear Eugene Asante. Coach, come on, man. You're too loud. You're killing me. You're blowing my head up. You gotta bring it down a notch. Bring it down a notch. I got this speaker in my head. Like, let's just tell me what I got to know. Yeah, we don't have to yell. It's just right here by my ears. So I think that's hilarious. And that kind of personality is something that, I mentioned earlier that every time I hear this guy speak, I'm starting to like him more and more and more. So pass rush, it seems to be the theme, continuing to be able to pressure the quarterback, which is something that Auburn struggled with over the last several years of being able to get consistent pressure on a quarterback since, maybe all the way back to 2019, which I feel like that was an unbelievable defense, a forgotten defense that was just unreal. Derrick Brown, Marlon Davidson, those guys were able to really wreak havoc and force quarterbacks into bad decisions, force quarterbacks into stressful situations. So to be able to have something, hopefully, maybe not quite as good, but hopefully something that can be similar and just kind of get after. I love getting after the quarterback, man. I love disruption. I love good defensive line play. So it seems like that's been the theme. And then obviously helmet comms, you're going to have it for both offense and defense. Offense is going to be a lot of the same. It's a no huddle offense. So you're going to have some communications with Payton. Hey, be looking for this, but the signal's coming in from the sideline. And then if there's a check, if there needs to be a check, you got Payton that could call a check, or you got Hugh in the headset, or somebody in the headset that could be telling him what to be looking for on a particular check that he needs to make. So shifting over from defense to offense, my man Derrick Nix, so excited that he's finally here. The big thing that he said that I thought is a sort of a confirmation bias, confirmation of what I've been saying, what I've been hearing, talking about alignment but on the offense. But he said about Payton, he said he's an extension of the coaching staff. He's an extension of the coaching staff. And again, that could not speak more to everybody being on the same page. I honestly think last year, I can't even imagine what it was like. I can't even really imagine what it was like last year to hear the differences that just in fall camp leading up into the season. It's hard to sort of fathom how bad of a situation that was on offense. And it's pretty easy to see how things went off the rails because of people pulling in different directions, Payton not being able to have sort of the freedom to make checks. I'm sure that puts a lot of doubt in your mind. So it's hard to even be confident to be a leader as a quarterback when you're not even 1,000% sure or 1,000% confident in the game plan or what you have to work with. So to be called a coach, an extension of the coaching staff, I think is something big. And the more and more I hear about this offense, the more and more talk and the more and more chatter and the more information that comes out about this offense, the more confident I feel that Payton and this offense are going to have a big year. I really do. The jump now, it may not be like the top yardage per game total offense in the conference or country. But when you go, if you could see a huge increased offensive output, which is a lot of times last year, all you really needed to be able to knock off a couple of those closer games, win a couple of those closer games that really the only thing that lost you was, hey, we just needed a couple more offensive possessions. We just needed another score. We just needed a few more first downs to give our defense a rest, and we would have been fine. We would have won the game. A little more balance, and you have a chance to not only win, but you have a chance to beat some really good team. Like you have a chance to beat some incredible teams, highly ranked teams on your schedule that you were competitive with. So the more and more Derrick Nix talks, he talked about the leadership in the wide receiver room that we've talked about, loves Keandre Lambert-Smith, really bragged on Robert Lewis. The way he does things he says is at a professional level, which is something that, you love to hear and something you don't hear very often as far as wide receivers go. And the dividends that's paying onto the younger guys. A lot of good stuff that Derrick Nix shares, that he shares every time that he speaks. And I just think he's an incredible representative for Auburn, and love finally getting him here and having him linking up with Hugh Freeze. And then the last coach that spoke, you don't hear very often. You don't hear from this guy very often, but Tanner Burns, he's the special teams coordinator. I'm going to talk about this for a second. Tanner Burns was in a really tough situation last year. Okay. He was probably one of the only coaches in the SEC that was an off the field coach, but also a coordinator. Okay. So he was the special teams coordinator. And for over half of the year, he could not coordinate directly with the team. He could not call plays on the field directly. So anything that he had to do, any game planning still had to go through a position coach. And I believe sometimes that was Cadillac Williams. Sometimes that was Coach Freeze. But basically he's having to run a unit, and he couldn't do it directly. He couldn't coach them directly. Now I'm sure in practice, I'm sure behind closed doors, there were some meetings and there was some stuff where he could have some direct communication, maybe over the table, under the table, whatever. But by and large, when it was game day for those first several weeks before Wesley McGriff stepped off the field, Hugh Freeze was calling the special teams plays. Tanner Burns was signaling in. Hugh Freeze was calling the plays. So to be able to have a return unit like we had is pretty impressive. Our punt team coverage was very impressive. You had very few returns at all, and your punter continued to get better and better and better as the year goes on, and now he's going to be probably one of the better punters in the country. You didn't have a missed field goal. How about that? Alex McPherson did not have a single missed field goal. The only unit that you struggled a little bit sometimes was kickoff return. And we could do a whole show on that, why that is, and whatever. And then obviously you had the blunder. I say blunder. You had sort of the freakish thing that happened in the Iron Bowl with Keontae Scott getting hurt, and then you put your backup in, and unfortunately, you had the situation with the muff punt that ended up really losing the game. So Tanner Burns speaks. He talks about Alex McPherson. I think everybody's curious to know what's going on with Alec McPherson. Said he's starting to gain his weight back, which is great. I think some people said he had gotten close to 100 pounds, which is scary, honestly. But he said he's back up to 140, so he's gained a lot of his weight back. He's actually starting to kick again. So remember that. He hasn't even really started kicking again up until recently. So the odds of him really being able to play this year, to me, are probably pretty slim. I mean, if anything, maybe towards the end of the year. I mean, it's just imagine taking months off. Imagine having months off. I mean, all the way back through spring. Because remember, Towns Magoo kicked the whole everything during the spring game. So you go all the way back through spring, and that you haven't really been doing a whole lot because you've been, sick or having your issue. It's going to be tough. It's going to take some time. And I think he's the kind of kid that's driven enough to actually get back to where he is. And I think he's driven to succeed, because he's competitive with his older brother who's in the NFL. He wants to get to the NFL too. So that's good news to hear that he's actually, from a health standpoint, sort of slowly getting his way back into being able to be in playing shape, and then actually being able to start kicking again. Because the more kickers, the better. You kind of could have the best two kickers in the country when Alex is at full health. But you do have Towns Magoo right now, who's by all accounts incredible. So you feel pretty good about the kicking situation. But it's good to hear that Alex is sort of getting back into shape. To me, the big thing that he threw out there that I think is exciting, I think is fun to imagine. But he talked about kickoff return. He said, "Hey, if the game was played today, I think it's going to be Cobb and Malcolm Simmons back there. Total electricity on kickoff return. I'm excited about that. Everybody should be excited about that. This is another example of finding ways to get the ball in Malcolm Simmons' hands, even if it's on a kickoff. They feel like this kid could explode at any moment. He's fearless, and going ahead and making an impact early as a freshman and getting in there. Special teams is typically one of the best ways to do it. I'm going to be honest, kickoff drill in high school was my least favorite thing to do. Kickoff team was not a ton of fun. Whatever, call me whatever, but it's scary. It is. You got dudes coming full speed downhill coming right at you. And for a lot of the time, you're looking up in the air. You're looking up in the air at the ball. You don't get to see where everybody is until you catch the ball. So I know touchbacks are a big thing in college football. There's not just a ton of returns or opportunities for returns, especially since they moved the touchback out to the 25-yard line. But still, hey, Malcolm may be one of those guys. I don't care if it's 8 yards deep. I'm coming out and I'm going to make a play. Hopefully he's a little bit more disciplined than that. But regardless, I love seeing Malcolm Simmons being able to crack early starting lineups. And I think he's going to take one to the house this year. I think Malcolm's going to house one. Hey, and then you got Cobb. You got Cobb on the other side, who's just as explosive, a little bit bigger, a little bit more solid. I think I like that. I like that. That little 1-2 punch back there. Pick your poison. Hey, you want to kick it to the smaller guy? Fine. Go ahead and kick it over there. He's lightning in a bottle. You want to kick it to the bigger guy who may not be quite have the top end speed. That's fine. He'll run through your face or he'll run around you. You pick your poison. Pick your poison. You want to go left, you want to go right, doesn't matter. Whichever way it goes, Auburn's going to have some electricity back there to return kickoff. So a lot of good info there on special teams just in general. You talked about Keontae Scott, how he's been out a little bit, but he's, an electric punt returner and he's still going to be there. That's his spot. That's where he's going to shine. And just continue to brag on the units and as a whole. And this year he actually gets to 24/7 coach one-on-one as a special teams coordinator. I think it's going to yield big dividends. He'll be able to call plays on Saturday. He'll be able to coach in practice one-on-one. He'll be able to game plan at practice one-on-one. There's no more signaling in, what I would like to happen and then it having to go through someone else. This is your guy. He's with the new rule, he's able to coach one-on-one. He's a fun guy. I think he's a good recruiter too. When they get on campus, he's got an electric personality. So great insight from the coaches all this week, all the way from Tiger Talk to the Q&As to the press conferences shortly after practice. I love this staff. I love the makings of what we have here, and I love the information that they share. So let's see what else. Let's see what other fun stuff that comes out. We're going to be back again tomorrow talking about practice that goes to any type of practice stuff that goes down leading up to what they're going to call a mock game on Saturday, where they're going to basically do a dress rehearsal from the pregame meal to the walkthrough to everything. We're going to make sure we're on point, ready to go for next Saturday, and we should have some information on how all that goes down as well. So guys, if you haven't subscribed to the Barn, you need to. thebarnauburn.com, $1 for the first month. Incredible insight, incredible recruiting nuggets that typically you don't get. I don't want to say you don't get anywhere else, but from maybe a little bit more from a different perspective. Okay. Not from just a completely different perspective, team information from a different perspective, a lot of relationships with players, things like that. So you get some good insight. It's a lot of fun, great conversation. Check us out, thebarnauburn.com. You can interact with me. You can interact with Zach. You can interact with Daryl Dapprich. A lot of the guys that you see all across the podcast land, we're all there having a lot of fun every single day. So check us out there. If you like this video, like it. If you like this channel, subscribe to it. Follow me on Twitter at @the_Charlie_5. And we're going to be back again tomorrow. We're going to be back every single day because this is the Top Button Podcast, and I need y'all to stay buttoned up.
Thanks for listening, and drive home safely.